Pine Creek, Texas. Population, 3,821. These words are spoken by a calm, professional narrator as the camera slowly pans across a typical Texas landscape. Endless plains, oil derricks in the distance, and a small town that seems frozen in time. A main street lined with shops, a church with a white spire, a red brick courthouse, a classic American landscape. This is the story of how a town where everyone knows each other by name witnessed one of the most shocking crimes in county history, and how money, love, and secrets turned a perfect couple into crime headlines. On March 25, 2024, a man arrived in Pine Creek who would forever change the fate of this sleepy town. Robert Hagen pulled up in his black Range Rover, stopped at the only cafe in town, Melanie's, and ordered a cup of black coffee. A tall, fit man with graying temples and a confident gaze, he looked out of place in this simple establishment with its checkered tablecloths and worn menus. "I knew right away he wasn't from around here," recalls Melanie Woods, the cafe's owner, in an interview for a documentary film. "Pine Creek doesn't get many strangers, especially ones that look so polished. But Elaine, she looked at him like he was a prince from a fairy tale." Elaine Morgan worked as a waitress at Melanie's cafe, but it was a temporary solution for a woman with a journalism degree. After the local newspaper where she was a senior reporter closed, Elaine didn't want to leave her hometown and took any job that would allow her to stay in Pine Creek. "She was smarter than all of us put together," Melanie says, nervously twisting a napkin. "She could have moved to the big city and made a career for herself, but she loved this place. She loved the people here." On the day Robert Hagen first walked into Melanie's, Elaine was captivated by him from the moment she saw him. Their conversation began with a simple question about the best places in town and ended with a 3-hour chat at a table by the window. "He said he was here to look at a site for a new oil refinery," says Sheriff Tom Caldwell, adjusting his worn hat. "Our town is located away from the main oil fields, but Hagen talked about some innovative technologies and new developments. Many in the town saw this as a chance for jobs and a new life." Robert Hagen was not just a businessman. He was the founder and CEO of Hagen Oil Ventures, a company that had grown from a small startup to one of the key players in the Texas oil market over the past 10 years. According to Forbes, Hagen's fortune exceeded $500 million. "I checked him out as soon as he started showing interest in Elaine," Sheriff Caldwell admits. "Nothing criminal. Divorced 10 years ago. A few charitable foundations. A reputation as a tough but honest businessman. At first glance, a crystal clear background." Robert and Elaine's romance developed rapidly. After 2 weeks of daily meetings in a cafe, Robert rented a house on the outskirts of Pine Creek and began spending more and more time there, taking time off from his business in Houston. "He showered her with gifts," recalls Jane Foster, the owner of a local flower shop. "He ordered bouquets and jewelry every day. Once he sent musicians to play a serenade outside the cafe while Elaine was working. The whole town was talking about it." For Elaine, who had almost resigned herself to loneliness after several failed relationships, Robert's attention seemed like a miracle. A former journalist accustomed to getting to the bottom of things, she allowed herself to believe in a fairy tale. "I've never seen her so happy," says Melanie Woods, her voice trembling. "She was glowing from within. But there was something about him. I can't explain it. When he looked at her, when he thought no one was watching, there was something cold in his eyes." 3 months after they met on Independence Day, Robert proposed to Elaine. The ceremony was grand by small-town standards. Fireworks, an orchestra from Houston, and a diamond ring worth more than the local school's annual budget. "It was like something out of a movie," says Emma Hartley, a hairdresser and longtime friend of Elaine's. "He got down on one knee right in the middle of the town square, in front of the whole town. How could she say no?" But not everyone in Pine Creek shared the general enthusiasm. James Donovan, Robert's personal lawyer and friend who had come to the engagement party, looked concerned. "I've known Robert for 15 years, Donovan said in his only interview after the tragedy. "He was never an impulsive person. Everything he did had a purpose, a strategy. This wedding, it seemed too hasty even for me." After the engagement, Elaine quit her job at the cafe. Robert insisted that she focus on organizing their future home and preparing for the wedding. which was planned for the fall. He gave her unlimited credit and introduced her to interior designers and wedding planners in Houston. She changed, Melanie recalls. Not right away, but gradually. She became more closed off. We had shared everything since childhood, and now she seemed distant. When I asked if everything was okay, she always replied, "I just can't believe how happy I am." In August, Robert announced the start of construction on an oil refinery 5 miles from Pine Creek. The news was met with mixed reactions. Many welcomed the prospect of new jobs, but there were also those who expressed concern about the environmental impact. Elaine would have been the first to ask the tough questions, said Sean Patterson, a science teacher at the local school and an environmental activist. When she worked at the newspaper, no one could shut her up. And now, she was standing next to Robert at the project presentation, applauding along with everyone else. In mid-September, an incident occurred that caused some Pine Creek residents to view Robert Hagen differently. During dinner at a restaurant in a neighboring town, a waitress accidentally spilled wine on Robert's suit. According to eyewitnesses, his reaction was disproportionately aggressive. He didn't just get angry, he humiliated the girl, said Mark Dawson, who was dining at a nearby table. He demanded that she be fired and threatened to sue. Elaine tried to calm him down, but he snapped at her. I remember how pale she turned. It was the first time we saw a different side of Robert Hagen. Despite this incident, wedding preparations were in full swing. Robert purchased a large piece of land on a hill overlooking the city and began construction on a mansion that was to become their family home after the wedding. Elaine showed me the plans, Melanie recalls. A huge house, a swimming pool, a tennis court. She talked about it enthusiastically, but sometimes I caught a look of confusion in her eyes. It was as if she didn't quite believe that all this was happening to her. At the end of September, a month before the wedding, Elaine unexpectedly left for Houston, according to Robert, to choose a wedding dress and meet with the planners. She was gone for almost a week, and when she returned, many noticed a change in her behavior. She became nervous and kept checking her phone, says Emma Hartley. When I asked her about the dress, she answered distractedly, as if she couldn't remember the details. It was strange for a bride who had always dreamed of the perfect wedding. On October 3rd, 3 weeks before the wedding, Elaine received a phone call that, as it turned out, changed everything. She was at Melanie's cafe, drinking coffee, and looking through invitation catalogs when her phone rang. Seeing the number, she frowned but answered and stepped outside to talk privately. When she came back, she had this look on her face, like she had seen a ghost, Melanie recalls. I asked if everything was okay, but she just nodded and said she had to go. I never saw her alive again. On October 4th, the day after the mysterious phone call, Elaine didn't show up for her wedding jewelry fitting, which she had scheduled herself at a local jewelry store. It wasn't like her at all, says Martha Simmons, the jewelry store owner. Elaine was always punctual, and it was an important day. Robert had ordered an exclusive diamond tiara from New York, especially for her. When Robert couldn't reach his fiancée, he turned to Melanie. She hadn't seen her friend since the previous day, when Elaine suddenly left the cafe after a strange phone call. He seemed worried but not scared, Melanie recalls. More annoyed, as if Elaine had ruined some plan of his. By evening, after several hours of trying unsuccessfully to contact Elaine, Robert was ready to call the police. But at that moment, she called him herself. According to Robert, she apologized and explained her absence by saying she had a sudden migraine attack that had kept her in bed all day with her phone turned off. However, Melanie noticed that Elaine's car was not parked outside her house that evening, as it usually was. When her friend stopped by the cafe for a cup of coffee the next day, Melanie shared her observation. I didn't say anything accusatory. I just asked where she had been, Melanie recalls. Elaine froze for a second, then replied that she had left her car in the garage because it was broken. But I knew she was lying. Her car wasn't broken. I had seen her drive it there. In the days that followed, Elaine became even more withdrawn and nervous. She canceled several wedding planning meetings, citing illness. Robert, initially annoyed, soon became concerned. He ordered a full medical examination for her at a private clinic in Houston, says Emma Hartley. He even called in a specialist who took tests from her at home. To outsiders, it looked like the concern of a loving fiancé, but Elaine later confessed to me that she felt like a guinea pig. On October 9th, an incident occurred that further heightened Elaine's friend's concerns. She and Robert were dining at the only upscale restaurant in Pine Creek when a man approached their table and introduced himself as a journalist from an environmental publication. He began asking Robert questions about the potential environmental impact of the new plant. Robert reacted instantly and aggressively, said Kate Wilson, a waitress at the restaurant. He cut the reporter off mid-sentence, said something like, "Not here, not now," and called the manager. The guy was out of the restaurant within a minute. According to eyewitnesses, Elaine, a former journalist, looked shaken by her fiancé's reaction. After the reporter left, she tried to ask Robert a few questions, but he abruptly changed the subject. "We all know that Elaine used to be a real bulldog when it came to investigative journalism," said Sheriff Caldwell. "I think this case piqued her professional curiosity." The next day, October 10th, Robert left for Houston for 2 days on business. Elaine was supposed to go with him, but at the last minute she declined, citing a persistent migraine. As soon as Robert left, Elaine unexpectedly showed up at the Pine Creek City Hall and requested all public documents related to the Hagen Oil Ventures oil refinery project. She was focused and serious, recalls Lauren Page, the town clerk. Not at all like a happy bride before her wedding. She studied the documents for several hours, took notes, and photographed some of the pages. That evening, Elaine visited Sean Patterson, a local teacher and environmentalist who was one of the few people openly opposed to the plant's construction. She asked a lot of questions about the types of pollution and possible violations of environmental laws, Patterson said. At one point, she showed me the results of an independent soil and water analysis done near the future construction site. According to this data, there was already significant heavy metal contamination, even though construction hadn't even started yet. On October 11th, Elaine met Melanie at her cafe after closing. According to her friend, Elaine looked both excited and frightened. She showed me documents that she said she had found on Robert's laptop when he left it open, Melanie says. They were emails between Robert and some people from the Environmental Inspection Agency. The correspondence suggested that he had bribed officials to obtain all the necessary construction permits. According to Melanie, Elaine suspected that Robert's real goal was not to build a modern, environmentally friendly plant, but to use the site for the illegal disposal of toxic waste from other Hagen Oil Ventures companies. She told me that the journalist who approached them at the restaurant was actually trying to give her some information. Melanie continues. After Robert kicked him out, the guy waited for Elaine near the restroom and managed to whisper that he had evidence against Robert. He left her his phone number on a napkin. That evening, Elaine called the journalist, who introduced himself as Michael Green. They agreed to meet the next day in a nearby town. I begged her not to go alone, Melanie says with tears in her eyes. I offered to go with her, but she refused. She said she didn't want to get me involved. On October 12th, Elaine left for her meeting with the journalist, telling Robert, who was still in Houston, that she was going to a neighboring town to buy wedding shoes. When she returned that evening, Melanie noticed that her friend looked both frightened and determined. She didn't tell me what she had found out, but she hinted that it was something serious, possibly criminal, Melanie recalls. Elaine only mentioned that it wasn't just about environmental violations, but also about Robert's past, something to do with his ex-wife. On October 13th, Robert returned from Houston and immediately noticed a change in his fiancée's behavior. According to his driver, they had a tense conversation, after which Robert looked worried. The boss was out of sorts, the driver said anonymously. He was always a calm, in-control person, but that day, he was nervous, called his lawyer several times and said something about problems from the past coming up. That evening, Robert went to the construction site of the future factory, although he didn't usually visit it at that time of day. He spent several hours there with the chief engineer of the project. Meanwhile, Elaine met with Melanie again, and this time shared more details. She found out that Robert's first wife, Christina, didn't just divorce him as everyone thought, Melanie says. According to the official version after the divorce, Christina left for Europe to start a new life. But the journalist showed Elaine evidence that there were no records of Christina Hagen crossing the US border since their divorce. What's more, her credit cards and bank accounts had not been used since then. According to Melanie, Elaine believed that Christina might have been murdered and that Robert had somehow covered it up with his connections and money. She was terrified, but also furious, Melanie recalls. She told me she couldn't marry a man who might have killed his ex-wife and was planning to poison an entire town. But she was also afraid to just break off the engagement. Elaine knew too much. On October 14th, Elaine did what was probably the turning point in this story. She called James Donovan, Robert's lawyer and close friend, and asked for a confidential meeting. James never said what they talked about, notes Sheriff Caldwell. He cited attorney-client privilege, but after that meeting he called Robert, who immediately returned from the set. Witnesses claim that Robert and James had a loud argument in the latter's office. The lawyer's secretary heard Robert shouting something about controlling the situation and eliminating the problem. That evening, Robert invited Elaine to a romantic dinner. According to restaurant employees, they looked calm and even happy, like a couple in love on the eve of their wedding. No one could have guessed the storm raging beneath the calm exterior. On the morning of October 15th, Elaine called the sheriff's office and asked to speak to Tom Caldwell. However, she did not show up at the appointed time. I called her, but her phone was off, the sheriff recalls. Then I called Robert, and he said Elaine had gone to Houston to get her wedding dress. That seemed strange to me. Why schedule a meeting and then leave without saying anything? That evening, Elaine finally called the sheriff and apologized for canceling the meeting. According to Caldwell, she sounded nervous and spoke quickly, as if someone was watching her. She said she wanted to talk to me about possible environmental violations related to the plant, but then decided there wasn't enough evidence, the sheriff said. I told her to stop by the office any time if she changed her mind. She thanked me and ended the conversation quickly. On October 16th, 2 weeks before her wedding, Elaine received another phone call that made her turn pale in front of the other patrons at Melanie's cafe. She was sitting at her usual table, looking through some documents, said Bill Harris, a regular at the cafe. When the phone rang, she glanced at the screen and her face changed. She answered with monosyllables, "Yes, no, I understand." Then she suddenly asked, "How did you prove that?" And immediately after that, "Are you sure it's safe?" After the call, Elaine hurriedly left the cafe, barely saying goodbye to Melanie. Surveillance cameras at a gas station show her driving in the direction of the factory construction site. She had never been interested in that construction site before, Melanie notes. Even when everyone was talking about the plant, she usually kept quiet, and then suddenly she was so interested. Security cameras at the entrance to the construction site recorded Elaine parking her car near the fence, but not entering the site. Instead, she took out a camera with a long lens and started taking pictures of something on the site. A security guard noticed her and approached to ask what she was doing, said Sheriff Caldwell, who reviewed the surveillance footage. She showed him her wedding ring and said she was Mr. Hagen's fiancée and just wanted to take some pictures for her wedding album. The security guard believed her and walked away, but continued to watch her from a distance. After half an hour of taking photos, Elaine left. According to her phone's GPS, which was later seized by investigators, she did not go home, but to a public library in a neighboring town, where she spent several hours on a computer. She was looking for information about Christine Hagen, Robert's first wife, said the librarian, who asked not to be named. I helped her find some old newspaper articles. She was particularly interested in reports about the divorce proceedings 10 years ago and Christine's subsequent departure. On the evening of October 16th, Elaine returned home to find Robert waiting for her. According to a neighbor who was walking her dog at the time, there was a heated conversation between them. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see their silhouettes through the window, said Doris Miller. At first, they were standing facing each other. Then Robert suddenly grabbed something from Elaine's hands. It looked like a folder with documents. She tried to take it back, but he wouldn't let her. After the incident, Elaine didn't leave the house for 2 days and didn't answer Melanie's calls. When she finally showed up at the cafe on October 18th, she looked exhausted but strangely calm. She told me she had made up her mind, Melanie recalls, that she had a plan. When I asked her if she was still going to marry Robert, She replied cryptically, "I have no choice, but that doesn't mean I don't have leverage." That same day, Elaine visited the bank where she rented a safe deposit box. According to a bank employee, she placed a sealed envelope inside. "She asked me to remember that if anything happened to her, the contents of the box should be given to Sheriff Caldwell," the employee said. I joked that she sounded like she was in a thriller, but she didn't smile. She just said, "Sometimes reality is scarier than any movie." On October 19th, Elaine and Robert appeared at a charity event in Pine Creek to support the local school. To everyone present, they looked like the perfect couple, in love, beautiful, happy. "No one would have guessed that anything was wrong," says Emma Hartley. "They danced and laughed." Robert gave a touching speech about how Pine Creek had become his new home thanks to Elaine. Many women in the room were moved to tears. After the party, Melanie received a short message from Elaine. "Tomorrow at 10. I need to show you something. It's important." On the morning of October 20th, Elaine didn't show up for her meeting with her friend. Her phone was off. Concerned, Melanie drove to Elaine's house and found the door unlocked. Upon entering, she found her friend's body. The discovery of Elaine Morgan's body shook the quiet town of Pine Creek to its core. Melanie Woods, who found her friend dead, was so shocked that she couldn't speak for several hours after the police arrived. "I've never seen her in that state," Sheriff Caldwell said. "Melanie has always been a strong woman, but on that day, she was completely broken." A preliminary examination of the scene indicated a violent death. Elaine's body was found in the living room of her home. Investigators noted signs of a struggle, a broken vase, an overturned coffee table, and a torn curtain. "The preliminary cause of death has been determined as strangulation," said Dr. Harris, the county medical examiner. There were distinctive finger marks on the victim's neck, indicating that the killer strangled her with his bare hands, which requires considerable physical strength. Sheriff Caldwell immediately launched an investigation, focusing first on reconstructing Elaine's last hours. According to surveillance cameras and witness statements, Elaine and Robert left the charity event at around 11:30 p.m. on October 19th. One of the waiters called them a taxi because they had both been drinking champagne, Caldwell said. The taxi driver confirmed that he dropped them both off at Elaine's house at around midnight. According to the taxi driver, the atmosphere in the car was tense. Elaine and Robert hardly spoke, and when they arrived at the house, there was a brief argument about whether Robert would stay the night. The driver heard Mr. Hagen say something like, "We need to talk," to which Miss Morgan replied, "Not tonight," the sheriff continued. Robert then asked the taxi driver to wait and walked Elaine to the door. After a brief conversation, he returned to the taxi and drove away to the house he had rented. CCTV cameras from a neighboring house recorded Elaine entering her home alone at 12:15 a.m. The lights in her windows were on until 1:30 a.m., after which the house was plunged into darkness. A neighbor noted that at around 3:45 a.m., he was awakened by the sound of a car engine, Caldwell said. Looking out the window, he saw a dark SUV, similar to Robert's Range Rover, parked near Elaine's house. However, he could not say with certainty whether it was Hagen's car. At 5:30 a.m., a camera on the corner of the street captured a male figure quickly leaving the area of Elaine's house. Due to poor lighting and a hood pulled over his face, it was impossible to identify the man. Robert Hagen claimed that he had spent the night at home alone. The lack of surveillance cameras in his rented apartment made it impossible to verify his alibi. "We found his cell phone and laptop in his home," Caldwell said. "But that doesn't prove anything. He could have left them there on purpose to create an alibi." The day after the body was found, Sheriff Caldwell visited the bank where Elaine had rented a safe deposit box. A bank employee confirmed her instructions to hand over the contents to the sheriff in the event of her death. The safe deposit box contained an envelope with a flash drive and a handwritten note, the sheriff said. The note read, "If you are reading this, then my suspicions were correct. The flash drive contains evidence of 2 crimes committed by Robert Hagen, one environmental and one more sinister. The password for the encrypted files is, Christina deserved justice." The flash drive contained an array of documents, photos of the construction site showing illegal disposal of toxic waste, correspondence between Robert and corrupt officials, and a folder titled Christina, containing information about Robert's first wife. Elaine did some impressive investigative work, Caldwell said with respect. She found witnesses who saw Christina in the days before she supposedly left for Europe. According to them, Christina seemed frightened and told close friends that she had discovered something shocking about Robert's business. According to documents gathered by Elaine, Robert Hagen's first company was involved in a major environmental disaster in the small Texas town of Riverside. After a toxic chemical spill caused widespread illness among local residents, the company went bankrupt, and Robert founded a new one under a different name. Christina was an environmentalist by training, the sheriff explains. She could recognize the signs of environmental violations and probably started her own investigation, as Elaine later did. The most shocking document on the flash drive was a scanned letter from Christina to her sister, dated the day of her disappearance. In it, she wrote that she was going to confront Robert with evidence of his crimes, and if anything happened to her, look in the lake behind the country house. We never found this letter in the original investigation into Christine's disappearance, Caldwell said. It was as if it had been removed from the evidence. The flash drive also contained an audio recording of a recent conversation between Elaine and journalist Michael Green. In the recording, the journalist talks about his own investigation into Christine's disappearance and how he got on Elaine's trail after learning about Robert's engagement. "I tried to contact you before, but he's always around, isn't he? You need to be very careful. I haven't been able to prove his involvement in Christina's disappearance, but I'm sure he's guilty. And if you start asking questions, your life is in danger too." After this conversation, Elaine apparently decided to proceed with caution. She pretended to return to her wedding preparations while secretly gathering evidence. Of particular interest to the investigation was a phone call Elaine received on October 3rd that had so alarmed her. Call records showed that the number belonged to Anna Hagen, Christina's sister. "We contacted her, and she confirmed that she had called Elaine," Caldwell said. "She said she had been watching Robert for a long time, waiting for him to make a mistake. When she found out about his engagement, she decided to warn Elaine." Anna admitted that she had always suspected Robert of her sister's disappearance, but couldn't prove it. She told Elaine where to look for clues, and that set off a chain of events that led to the tragedy. One piece of evidence Elaine gathered proved particularly important to the investigation. The photos she took of the construction site on October 16th captured the moment when workers were unloading barrels labeled as hazardous waste into a pit that was to become the foundation of the plant. It was a scheme: bury the toxic waste under the plant and then pour concrete over it, explains Sean Patterson, an environmentalist. That way, no one would ever know what was hidden there, and Robert would save millions on proper disposal. On October 18th, 2 days before her death, Elaine met with James Donovan, Robert's lawyer. An audio recording of this meeting was also saved on a flash drive. "I know about Christine, James," Elaine says on the recording, "and that you helped cover it up. I don't want to end up like her." Donovan's response was unexpected. "Neither do I, Elaine. That's why I'm advising you to get as far away as possible. Now, disappear. I'll help you." Elaine replied, "Running won't stop him. He'll find someone else. And another town will be poisoned. I can't let that happen." On the evening of October 19th, after the charity event, Elaine sent Melanie a message. "Tomorrow at 10, I need to show you something. It's important." According to investigators, Elaine planned to show her friend the evidence she had gathered before handing it over to the authorities, but someone got there first. The time of death has been determined to be between 4 o'clock and 6 a.m. on October 20th, says Dr. Harris. The killer probably entered the house while Elaine was asleep and attacked her in the living room, where she went after hearing a noise. After the body was discovered, Robert Hagen expressed deep shock and grief. He cooperated actively with the investigation, voluntarily providing DNA samples and fingerprints. "I loved her with all my heart," he said in a brief interview with a local television station. "I will do everything I can to find whoever did this." However, further investigation began to reveal new details. Particles of skin believed to belong to the attacker with whom she had struggled were found under Elaine's fingernails. DNA testing of these particles became a key element in the investigation. The morning of October 21st, the second day of the investigation into the murder of Elaine Morgan. Sheriff Tom Caldwell sits in his office, surrounded by photos from the crime scene, when his deputy knocks on the door. "DNA test results, boss," he says, handing him a sealed envelope. The lab worked quickly, considering the circumstances. Caldwell slowly opens the envelope. The skin samples under the victim's fingernails do not belong to Robert Hagen, as many had expected. The DNA points to James Donovan, a lawyer and confidant of the Millionaire. An arrest warrant for Donovan was issued immediately, says Assistant District Attorney Lisa Warren. But by the time the police arrived at his office, James had already disappeared. Surveillance cameras at Houston Airport captured Donovan boarding a flight to Mexico on the evening of October 20th, just hours after Elaine's body was discovered. His hasty departure looked like an admission of guilt. While searching for Donovan, the investigation team went to check out the lake behind the country house, mentioned in Christina's letter. It was Robert Hagen's private property, an hour's drive from Houston, which he had purchased before meeting Christina. "We brought in divers and search teams," says Caldwell, and on the third day of the search they found a car at the bottom of the lake. In the trunk were remains that were later identified as belonging to Christine Hagen. This discovery radically changed the course of the investigation. Now there were two related murders, separated by a decade. Robert Hagen was immediately detained for questioning. "I had no idea that my ex-wife's body was there," he told investigators. "I thought she was in Europe all these years. I even have letters from her." However, handwriting analysis quickly established that the letters from Christine were forged. Meanwhile, the international search for James Donovan yielded results. He was arrested in a small Mexican town. During his extradition, Donovan unexpectedly agreed to cooperate with the investigation, offering a full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. "What he told us shocked even the most experienced investigators," recalls the assistant prosecutor. "The story turned out to be much more complicated than we had imagined." According to Donovan's confession 10 years ago, Christina did indeed discover her husband's environmental crimes. Robert, upon learning of this, flew into a rage, and in a fit of anger, pushed his wife down the stairs in their country house. Death was instantaneous. "Robert called me in a panic," Donovan said. "I came over and helped him get rid of the body. We loaded her into the trunk of the car, drove to the lake, and pushed the car into the water. Then we came up with a story about divorce and moving to Europe. In the years that followed, Donovan helped maintain the legend by sending fake letters on behalf of Christina and controlling the accounts she allegedly used abroad. As for Elaine's murder, Donovan's version was even more shocking. "Robert didn't kill Elaine," he claimed. "I did it, on his orders." According to the lawyer, Robert learned that Elaine had gathered evidence that could not only destroy his business, but also send him to prison for the murder of his first wife. After the charity event on October 19th, he summoned Donovan to his home. "He was furious and panicked at the same time," Donovan said. "He said Elaine knew too much and was going to tell the sheriff everything. He couldn't afford to go to prison. He ordered me to take care of the problem." According to testimony, Donovan broke into Elaine's home around 4 a.m. on October 20th. He planned to stage a robbery, but Elaine woke up and caught him in the living room. "I tried to explain that I just wanted to get the flash drive," Donovan said in a trembling voice. "I told her that if she gave me the evidence and left town, she would live, but she laughed in my face. She said the sheriff already had copies. It was a lie, but I didn't know that." A struggle ensued, during which Donovan said he lost control and strangled Elaine. After searching the house and not finding the flash drive, he panicked and fled. "When I told Robert what I had done, he coldly told me to disappear," Donovan concluded his confession. "He gave me money and a fake passport. He said he would take care of everything, that we would never see each other again." James Donovan's testimony seemed convincing, but Sheriff Caldwell was not rushing to conclusions. His many years of experience told him that the story could be even more complicated. The analysis of phone calls on the night of the murder proved decisive. Between 3:15 and 3:30 a.m., 3 calls were recorded between Robert and James, and at 5:45 a.m., shortly after the estimated time of the murder, there was another short call. Technicians recovered deleted messages from Robert's phone. The last one was sent to Donovan at 3:12 a.m. "She knows everything. She's going to the sheriff's office in the morning. Go with Plan B. No traces." This was enough for the court to charge Robert Hagen not only with the murder of Christine 10 years ago, but also with the murder of Elaine. For the next 4 days, the town of Pine Creek was the center of national attention. National news channels covered every twist and turn in the case of the Texas millionaire and his 2 brides. "This is a story of greed, power, and total impunity," commented a well-known crime analyst, about a man who believed that money gave him the right to control other people's lives. On October 24th, 4 days before her planned wedding, Elaine Morgan's funeral took place. The entire town came to say goodbye to a woman whose courage and integrity cost her her life, but helped solve a terrible crime. That same night, while awaiting transfer to the county jail, Robert Hagen asked to meet with Sheriff Caldwell. Their conversation remained between them, but after that meeting, Robert wrote a full confession to both murders. "He wanted to control the situation until the end," says the sheriff. "He even presented his confession as an act of nobility. He didn't want Donovan to take all the blame, but in reality, I think he just couldn't accept that he had been outsmarted." The last call Elaine received on October 19th, a few hours before her death, was from journalist Michael Green. In a voice message found on her phone by the sheriff, the reporter said, "I've got confirmation from a source in the police. They found something at the bottom of the lake near Hagen's house. Elaine, you were right. Be careful. See you tomorrow as planned." That meeting was never to take place. April 30th, 2025, Harris County Courthouse, Texas. The 6th day of the trial against Robert Hagen and James Donovan. The courtroom is packed with journalists from across the country, local residents, and the victims' families. In her closing statement, prosecutor Lisa Warren addresses the jury. 2 murders 10 years apart. 2 women whose only crime was learning the truth about a man they trusted. 2 lives cut short by greed, selfishness, and utter contempt for human life. The trial of Robert Hagen and James Donovan was the culmination of a 6-month investigation that shook not only the small town of Pine Creek, but the entire state of Texas. The trial revealed the horrific details of Robert Hagen's criminal activities, his business empire, and James Donovan's role in covering up the crimes. The investigation into the environmental crimes of Hagen Oil Ventures uncovered systematic violations of environmental laws in 3 states, said Nathan Rodriguez, a special agent with the Environmental Protection Agency. What was planned in Pine Creek was just the tip of the iceberg. According to the investigation, Robert Hagen developed a scheme for the illegal disposal of toxic waste from oil refining 10 years ago. Instead of expensive and legal recycling, hazardous substances were buried on land purchased for the construction of new facilities. Christina discovered this scheme by accident, says Anna Hagen, sister of the first victim. She was working on her master's thesis on environmental law and was taking soil samples near her husband's company's facilities for her research. The test results showed extremely high levels of contamination. When Christina tried to talk to her husband, he initially denied any involvement. But when she threatened to go to the authorities, tragedy struck. During an argument, Robert pushed his wife down the stairs in a fit of rage. Instead of calling an ambulance, he called his lawyer and friend, James Donovan. "It was a test of loyalty," Donovan said in court. "Robert told me, this is when we find out if you're my friend or not. I made the wrong choice, which I've regretted every day for the last 10 years. Donovan helped hide Christina's body, stage her departure for Europe, and maintain the cover story for years afterward. For this, he received a share in Hagen's rapidly growing business and the status of his closest confidant. After Christina's disappearance, business partners and acquaintances noted that Robert had become more ruthless and cynical in business. His company expanded aggressively, buying up competitors and land throughout Texas. He acted with a sense of complete impunity, said a former business partner of Hagen who wished to remain anonymous. As a man who had gotten away with murder once, he believed he could do anything. The court paid particular attention to the events of the day of Elaine's murder. Thanks to Donovan's testimony and technical evidence, including cell phone geolocation data and surveillance camera footage, a complete picture of what happened was reconstructed. After the charity event on October 19th, Robert did indeed leave Elaine's house after a brief conversation at the door. However, at 3 a.m., he received an alert from a security camera in his office. Someone had accessed his files. Elaine, using a password she had stolen, remotely connected to the company's server and copied the documents. In a panic, Robert called Donovan and activated their long-prepared Plan B, eliminating the witness. The lawyer arrived at Elaine's house at around 4:30 a.m. with the intention of stealing or destroying the evidence. However, Elaine, who had been up all night finishing gathering evidence, caught him in her office. The ensuing struggle led to a tragic outcome. Donovan, who was physically stronger than Elaine, strangled her and then searched unsuccessfully for the flash drive with the evidence, unaware that it had already been placed in a bank-safe deposit box. The day before she died, Elaine called me and said she had gathered enough evidence not only against Robert, but also against me, Donovan confessed in court. She offered me a deal, complete immunity from prosecution if I testified against Hagen. I said I would think about it, and then I told Robert everything. Michael Green, a journalist who helped Elaine with her investigation, became a key witness for the prosecution. He recounted in detail how he came across Robert Hagen while investigating an environmental disaster in Riverside. I spent years gathering information about pollution related to oil production in Texas, Green said, and I kept coming across companies that suddenly went bankrupt after environmental scandals, and their assets miraculously ended up with Hagen Oil Ventures. When I started digging deeper, I discovered a link between Robert and the disappearances of people who had been investigating his activities. Anna Hagen also gave impressive testimony. After her sister disappeared, she spent 10 years searching for evidence against Robert. I always knew he was guilty, she said in court. Christina called me on the day she disappeared. She was scared. She said that Robert had found out about her investigation and that she was afraid to go home. That was the last time I spoke to her. Anna recounted how she had followed Robert's career for years, gathering information and trying to get the authorities' attention. When she found out about Hagen's engagement to Elaine, she decided to take action. I couldn't let another woman die at his hands, she said with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry my warning wasn't enough. On May 2nd, 2025, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Robert Hagen was found guilty of the first-degree murder of Christina Hagen and the murder of Elaine Morgan. James Donovan was found guilty of the second-degree murder of Elaine Morgan and of aiding and abetting the murder of Christina. Judge Michael Clark sentenced Robert Hagen to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. James Donovan, thanks to a plea bargain and cooperation with the investigation, received a 25-year prison sentence. No amount of time will bring Elaine and Christine back, Melanie Woods said after the verdict was announced. But at least justice has been served. The consequences of this case were enormous. Hagen Oil Ventures was declared bankrupt after numerous lawsuits seeking compensation for environmental damage. Construction of the plant in Pine Creek was halted, and the site was transferred to the Environmental Protection Agency for cleanup of toxic waste. It will take years and millions of dollars to fully repair the damage to the environment caused by this criminal scheme, said an agency spokesperson. For the residents of Pine Creek, the court ruling marked the end of a dark chapter in their town's history, but it also marked the beginning of a long period of recovery. Many felt cheated, while others felt guilty for not noticing the warning signs earlier. We were all blinded by his money and promises of economic prosperity, admitted Mayor Harry Thompson. Elaine was the only one who had the courage to go against the tide and put the truth above personal gain. In memory of Elaine Morgan, the residents of Pine Creek established a fund to support investigative journalism in the field of environmental crime. The annual Elaine Morgan Award was established to honor journalists whose investigations have helped prevent environmental disasters. Anna Hagen was finally able to bury her sister next to their parents. At a modest ceremony, she said, Christina died trying to protect the environment and people's health. Elaine died seeking justice. Their sacrifices were not in vain. They brought down an empire of lies and saved countless lives. Michael Green wrote the best-selling book, Texas Tragedy, A Millionaire, 2 Brides, and an Environmental Disaster, which became a bestseller. In it, he detailed the entire story, including his role in helping Elaine and his decade-long investigation into Hagen's crimes. "I often wonder if we could have saved Elaine," he says in the book's epilogue. "If I had insisted that she go to the FBI immediately rather than gathering additional evidence. If we had acted faster." But Elaine was a journalist to the core. She wanted to have irrefutable proof before making accusations. Melanie Woods, Elaine's closest friend, continues to run her cafe in Pine Creek. On the wall hangs a photo of Elaine and a simple sign: "The truth is worth fighting for." "Not a day goes by that I don't think about what Elaine wanted to tell me that morning," Melanie says tearfully. "About what might have been if I had gotten there sooner." Sheriff Tom Caldwell, who played a key role in solving Robert Hagen's crimes, was honored for his outstanding service to justice. However, he declined to be interviewed for documentaries and books about the case. "We were just doing our job," he said briefly at the award ceremony. "The real hero is Elaine Morgan. She paid the ultimate price for justice." That last phone call Elaine received on October 3rd, which changed everything, became a symbol of the fragility of human life and the power of truth. One call destroyed a carefully constructed facade, exposed a criminal empire, and led to the restoration of justice, albeit at the cost of another life. In a world where money often drowns out the voice of truth, it sometimes takes the unwavering courage of one person to change the course of history, reads the closing credits of the documentary The Call from the Past, which won an Emmy Award in 2025. Elaine Morgan was that person. Her story is a reminder that the truth always comes out, no matter how deeply it is buried. Epilogue. Exactly 1 year after the tragic events, on October 20th, 2025, the residents of Pine Creek gathered for the dedication of the Elaine Morgan Memorial in the town park. A simple stone with a bronze plaque and a quote from her last unpublished article, found on her computer. "The truth is not afraid of the light. Only those who try to hide the truth are afraid of the light." The town of Pine Creek is slowly returning to normal life. The site where the oil refinery was to be built will be turned into the Christine and Elaine Wildlife Preserve once cleanup is complete. James Donovan is serving his sentence in federal prison, where he is rumored to be writing his memoirs about his role in Robert Hagen's crimes. Robert Hagen himself, once a powerful millionaire, spends his days in solitary confinement under the strictest regime, refusing interviews and contact with the outside world. And the phone from which Anna Hagen made that fateful call to Elaine is now kept in a crime museum as a reminder that sometimes a single phone call can change everything.